like this theme, and I think we're only really just getting started with it. And I think there's lots more that we could do on this idea of data for your career development. And I found this quote from Cindy Farina, who used to be the chief executive of Hewlett Packard. She's really interesting. She actually had quite a squiggly career story. Started off as like a secretary, like really early on in her kind of career, and then sort of made her way to CEO. You know, one of those stories where you're just like, wow, how did she get sort of from here to here? And you can read about her on the BBC did a kind of profile of her. And actually, she's quite controversial as well. So it actually makes it interesting. But I thought this quote was really useful as a starting point around data. The goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. And I liked this idea of going, well, as somebody who doesn't naturally track loads of data, so I am not someone who, like, I went for a walk this morning. I don't know how many steps I did. And I also, I don't care how many steps I did. I don't want to know if I woke up in the night, what time it was and how long I was awake for. So I'm not a natural data tracker. You know, some people are sort of really on board with that, and they can probably sort of show you the data of their lives and their days. So I sort of go, oh, okay, well, I'm not somebody who this automatically appeals to. But the more I dig into this, the more useful I think it might be. And to Julia's point, data doesn't have to mean numbers. So let's just start with a why question. Why would we use data in terms of career development specifically? Like, why do we think this is useful? Let me know. Yeah, love that, Steve. Data you can't action isn't any use. Yeah, really good. Yeah, I agree, Sam. We talked about, you know, I think feelings can be data. Again, as long as you can, to Steve's point, as long as you take action with them. So why is this going to be useful for us? Okay, I really like that point about trends. It does give you a really good measure, something to keep coming back to. It provides perspective. Yes, Sam, great. We get perspective. Good measure of progress. Yeah, perspective and progress. And it sometimes helps us to see, you know, if let's say you were doing something more feeling based and you were like, oh, I feel everything's going wrong at the moment. Say you were catastrophizing. Actually, if you look back over the week and you'd got a feeling to describe every day over the last week, it perhaps helps you to zoom out a bit and to think, okay, well, today's not a good day, but actually in the scheme of the last week or the last month, things are okay. So that helps us to kind of zoom out and to zoom in. Data can validate, disprove assumptions. Yeah, and I think data can be numbers, can be feelings, but I do like this idea, as Joe's saying, like fact versus feeling. You know, sometimes I think often you overstate something because it feels very kind of visceral or real in that moment. And actually data can help you to disprove things. So I really like that kind of word around kind of proof. Yeah, lifting above a situation, measurable, quantifiable. Right. And what kind of data would you like for your development? Well, so we've kind of got the why, and actually we all got there quite quickly. I think there's some really good reasons like why we should be thinking about this topic. But what sort of data? So we've already said it doesn't all have to be numbers, but obviously some of it might be. But when you think about data specifically in the context of career development, just like what springs to mind for you? Doesn't matter whether you listen to the kind of the podcast or not. So we've talked about it could be feelings. It could be, yeah, really like that. Could be things like a skills matrix. It could be, I like that. I'm just going to do a little happiness. Could be about how happy people are. Yeah, you get to feedback with things like reviews, KPIs. Yeah, key performance indicators for people who don't use those. Appraisal marks. Yeah. Glish, you can never find the PodPlus sheets. Okay, we'll put either somebody would have already helped by putting a link in, or we'll put a link in for you. Labour market information is really useful, knowing what jobs are out there and new trends. Yeah, I recently signed up to, I've actually got it here, I'll show you. I don't know if you've come across, 80,000 hours. 80,000 hours are brilliant. They are, I don't know if they're a charity or a not-for-profit, but they have done a lot of work on like what makes for meaningful and impactful work, particularly I would say slightly more targeted to people starting out. Though I don't think, I still think it's useful regardless of where you are. If you were thinking, I don't have as much meaning as I would like. And what they do really well is, firstly, if you want the book, they send it to you for free, which I think is amazing. And then each week they send you these really good data-based emails saying, we have got 79 new roles on our site. And those 79 roles are broken down into these industries. And these are the sort of skills they're looking for. And so, I'm always interested in usefulness. I think they do a really good job of being useful if you're somebody searching for more fulfillment from the work and satisfaction from the work you do. And then you want to translate that into action, as in, I want a new job. Sam saying like data about your strengths. Yeah, you can get data from things like team roles, Strengths Finder, DISC, any of those profiles. What else have we got? Yeah, insight data when you send emails. Cheers, Steve. Yeah, 80,000 hours. Immediately heads to Google. I always wonder, actually, I probably shouldn't say, I should wait those things to the end, right? Because you lose people, because I've probably distracted you all now. A score over a period of time around mood. Yeah, I went to do lectures in Wales a couple of years ago, and someone there had invented, if that's the right word, created an app to track your mood. If any of you are particularly interested, I'll be able to find it. I just can't remember his name now. I think something like Gareth Delaney, and he color coded it. So you tracked your mood, and then he sort of turned it into a heat map. So you could sort of track your mood over time. And it was to do with mental health. And he was actually, I think he was an architect who'd suffered with depression. And so he started he sort of started to use data, essentially, probably like maybe slightly appealed to his brain and the way he liked to sort of structure things. You've got a stress tracker on your smart ring. It's just not for me. It doesn't mean I don't like it, Steve, but it's an interesting thing to do. Okay. So I thought the thing that's often interesting is, how do you get data on things that don't obviously feel like they would give you data? So, if we think about the number of emails you send, you're like, okay, I'm sure Microsoft can tell me that. And there are some things where it's easier to extract data. I always think then, what are the things where it feels hard, where it feels kind of hard to get data for them? And I think values is an interesting one. So if we think about values as things that motivate and drive us, Helen and I were then thinking, okay, so that always feels kind of quite hard. Values anyway can feel potentially a bit vague. We talk to groups often about, how do you make values concrete? How do you make them really practical so you can do something about them? And we borrowed from Dan Pink. Some of you know Dan Pink's work on drive. So we took this idea of, if values are your drivers, where do you get drive from in the work that you do? And what we tend to see is it comes from, or certainly what Dan Pink would tell you, is it comes from purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So purpose, do you feel connected to the work that you do? Mastery, you don't have to be the absolute expert, but do you feel like you've got, I always think, useful skills and strengths for the job that you're doing? Autonomy, do you feel like you've got the freedom to do the job, in the right way, the accountability to really think about how you do that job? So using stars on the screen, if you were rating your purpose, mastery, autonomy, 1 to 5, 5 being highest, let me just make the stars anonymous. Let me know where you would be at the moment. So put a star. 5 if you're like, my job is so purposeful. It's absolutely where I want it to be. 1 is, I really feel like I'm lacking that. I don't feel that sense of connection to the work that I'm doing at the moment. I was close, Lucy. That is the mood app. You've done a good job there of me translating, nearly getting a name right to actually finding it. Thank you. If you can't use stars on the screen, just do the exercise for yourself, or let us know in chat if you don't mind sharing with people. So let's see where we are. I actually thought this could be a really interesting exercise to do as a team, because we often talk about using values in teams when we understand kind of what motivates and drives people. And I think when you're thinking data for your development, and I'll come on to it in a second, there's both data for your development and then there's data for our development as a team. So which are things that are just more useful for you personally, and which are things that you could imagine doing as part of a group? Like, where would that be helpful? So maybe just something to kind of think about as you go through. So we've not got too many ones, which is a good thing. We don't want too many ones. We've got a few. We've got a lot in the sort of typical middle territory here, like quite a lot of 2s and 3s. Here we've got quite a lot of 4s, which is brilliant. And here as well, actually, we've got quite a few people here. So that's great, because you probably living your values in the work that you do. And we know that when your values are present, that's when we do our best work. And just when we get to the end of a week and think, was my time at work well spent this week? If those numbers are high, likelihood is the answer to that is yes. Yeah, Lucy's saying this would be really helpful in previous roles in terms of what's missing. Because I think then what is interesting is going, okay, well, what does it take to get from a 3 to a 4? You're essentially designing your own data for your development. So from wherever you are, you're thinking, okay, well, at the moment, I am here, I'm a 2, and maybe my ambition over the next 3 months is to move to a 3 and then to aim for a 4 by the end of the year. And you might track this once a month. One of the things that I found is at the start of the year, I tried to do some things daily just to see if I could kind of commit to, like a habit of doing something every day. And it just doesn't work for me. I think because variety is one of my values, it probably feels just sort of anti the way that I like to work. But what I do find is if every month I have half an hour to sort of look back over that month and then have almost a bit of a scorecard, a sort of squiggly scorecard of like, how am I doing on values? How am I doing on strengths? Those kind of areas. Actually, in half an hour, I can do it really quickly, because if I wait too long, our memories don't do a good job. And obviously, it's so easy to forget. So that works better for me as I'm sort of experimenting with this squiggly scorecard approach. Maybe that'd be a good thing for us to, maybe that'd be a good free tool for us to create at some point. And actually, interestingly, I went to a talk on the science of memory last week, and it really reinforced just how rubbish our memories are. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. But our memory, we change, even the memories we think we've got that are really clear and vivid, we've reshaped them. So they feel 100% accurate, but they're never 100% accurate. It's really, I find it very, very interesting. And so we don't want to rely on our memory, I think, to get accurate data. So it's a useful watch out. So let me just share those. I really like somebody I just saw there. So I was clearing the drawings. Who's reading Roman Krznarik's book? Hildy. So I really like Roman. I don't think I'd be doing what I was doing if it wasn't for Roman. He's been on the podcast talking about empathy, but he wrote a book called Wonderbox, which I read before I read How to Find Fulfilling Work. And it made me think that we weren't kind of completely off the mark with this idea of squiggly careers. So I really like his work, and those School of Life books are really good. Tina, I write everything down to avoid misremembering. Yeah, that's this scientist who sort of studied memory for 30 years would tell you that's a good thing to do. So let's take each of those and let's do a bit of crowdsourcing. If you were trying to increase your purpose score, kind of data on your purpose score from a 3 to a 4, from a 4 to a 5, what could you do? What ideas have you got for me? I have got an idea as well, but I thought I'd ask you first. So you need to increase that purpose score, feel more connected to the work that you do. What might that look like? Yes, spot on from Steve. So it might look like job crafting, some great articles on job crafting from London Business School, if you're interested in that, or if you've not come across that concept before. Job crafting very intentionally, doing the same job, but kind of crafting exactly how you spend your time, your role, your responsibilities. Usually, I'd say 90% of the time, something you have to do with your manager, because it's usually something you can't do independently. Goals, relationships, people. Yeah. For any of you who've read that, you know that I think it's a longitudinal study of like 80 years that they did at Harvard around happiness, which you have to be careful. There are some caveats around that study, because it was only men. I think all the men in the study were white because it was started so long ago. But they looked at what made people happy, and it was nothing to do with how much they earned or the jobs they'd done. Actually, it was to do with the relationships that they'd had, and had they got they got strong relationships and strong bonds in their life. It was sort of the biggest overall contributor to that sense of connection. Different sector, understand what other people are doing. Really nice mission statement for your role. Write your own elevator pitch from Charlotte there. Some really good ideas here. Side projects. Yeah, Julia, I think I've definitely done that before. Like basically sometimes do something else because you just can't get it from the day job. We also know anything around helping others. So whether it is volunteering, whether that's helping the person you sit next to, it's what scientists call the helper's high. So if you can kind of connect to how am I being helpful, you usually just get more of a sense of connection to what you do, to how what you do makes a difference. And that could also be helping other people in the organization. As Jenny's saying, great idea, getting involved in networks, coaching and mentoring, and naturally that's a helper role. So really that can just be a really good avenue to sort of nudge that score up. What about mastery? Thinking about, are my skills and strengths useful in the role that I'm doing? If you're a bit lower on that score, what could you do there? I grappled with this a bit because I was thinking in lots of my career, I was a generalist. So I was like, I was sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. But I was very driven. So I was like, so what was it that made sure that I still kind of really enjoyed those roles? And I think often it's because I was using my strengths. Yeah. So Steve's point around get a coach, I actually went down that route as well when I was coming up with ideas. I was thinking, who could be my sort of mastery mentor? Who is better at that thing than I am that I could go and learn from? Not necessarily in a formal mentoring way, but just looking at the thing that I wanted to be known for, the strength that I really wanted to stand out, and think, okay, well, who could stretch me? Who could help me to stretch that strength? So whether that's whether that's what could help me stretch my strengths. Lovely one from Lucy. Yeah, ask for feedback on your strengths. Does your intent match your impact? We know that's always a really good one. Oh, that's such an interesting, you're a remote fundraiser, Fiona, writing grant applications, and you recently went and spent a day at one of the projects. Brilliant. That really increased your sense of purpose. Yeah, because you are seeing the people that you are impacting. I saw that actually with someone I used to work with at Sainsbury's. He'd gone to a chicken farm for a day. And actually those days often feel like real nice to-dos, but they give you a real sense of purpose. You're like, well, this is why it's important that we look after our farmers, because you're sort of getting a day in the life of. So that's a really good example there from Fiona. Yeah, thinking about how you can stretch those skills, learn something, things like free webinars. I'll dig it out for you, but I did see an incredible post from somebody on LinkedIn where they listed all of the free learning that you can do from some like incredible institutions. I will dig it out and share it with kind of PodPlus in one of the weeks. And it's just like, yeah, it was just, I was like, it sort of looked like a pod sheet, but it was just like, here is a list of everything you can learn for free from Harvard, from Stanford. Lots of those places now have at least one free course. So depending on what you wanted to learn, there might be sort of a good fit there. What about autonomy? If you're thinking, I don't have as much autonomy in my role as I would like, which might feel hard because this might feel a bit out of your control. So what would we do about that? Yeah, outside development programs, really good. Yeah, really nice, Claire. Good advice from your mentor. Fill your bucket every week with something that inspires you. Yeah, so essentially what you're describing there is investing in your resilience reserve. So when you get to a knotty moment, you've done something. Thank you for people sharing some of those free courses from universities. That looks great. Autonomy, yeah, maybe a side project could be a good answer to that. Yeah, maybe something like a lunch and learn. Yeah, maybe it's a discussion, as Caroline is saying there, with your manager, like, where do you not have autonomy? I once got told, it really stuck with me, a lady called Tammy Erickson was teaching me at London Business School. I was doing a leadership program, and she said the single thing she thinks leaders can do to give people autonomy is to be really clear about the what and give 100% space on the how. So I often go to what and how. So I'm like, do I know what I need to do? And am I sort of deciding on the how? Because people need clarity on the what. Maybe you also want the autonomy to decide the what, but most of the time there's some goals or interdependencies that we have to be aware of here. So is it what that you're looking for more autonomy on, which it could be, or is it how? And I would be trying to spot, I think, what are those things I have the most control over? If you think you've got a sphere of control and a sphere of concern is stuff that might feel frustrating, worrying, get on your nerves, but you can't do loads about. Whereas control, you sort of go, okay, well, I can do something about this. So if I think about my days at Sainsbury's versus now, which are quite different, I had quite low levels of control at Sainsbury's in terms of like how I even spent my day and my time. At that point, everyone was in the office. I was in meetings loads of the time. There was very little options in my day. And so probably no surprise that I did do I did more volunteering at that point. I did do more side projects. But where I did have control is I sort of, and it sounds like a really small thing, I always used to leave Sainsbury's office in Holborn and be like, every day I'm going to leave, I'll go for a little walk and I'll just get a coffee. And I think probably because I'm introverted, it was a little bit of me time that I had very high levels of control over. And with my team, who I had high levels of control over, I would often take them out for a coffee, take them out of the building and be like, let's go for a walk, let's get a coffee. And it feels like a really small thing. But for me, it actually made a massive difference to my day. Now, I have a lot more control, sort of, over my days now, or at least a lot more choice. So it feels slightly different. But if I take myself back to those where I felt like, really, there were quite sort of small pockets of time, that made a really big difference for me. Yeah, lovely, Claire. Yeah, what can I control today? A great coaching question. And yeah, it's a really good tool to use. So one thing I'd encourage you to have a think about after today is really specifically, what do you want to develop and what's the data that's going to support that development? So just to give you a few examples here. So I was thinking, and I talked a bit about this in the podcast, I want to improve my listening. Okay, what data would help me with that? My listening versus talking ratio in a meeting. Do I need to track that? Can someone else track that for me? And I think I put it in. Yeah, here we go. Someone else can track this for me. So this is Fireflies, which is an AI tool. And so you can see in this meeting here, I was talking 32% of the time. Now, in this meeting, which is a one-to-one with Lucy, who's here today, Career Conversation with Lucy, I would say that number for me probably should have been more like 20%. They're more sort of where Helen was. I probably spent a bit too much time talking. Now, I could intuitively maybe think that, but actually seeing it there is really useful, because then I think, well, for my next 1 to 2, okay, I think I'm aiming for sort of 20, 25%, and I will know whether I've done that. So that was a really specific one for me where it's sort of unquestionable. And so did I put that? Yeah. So that might be one thing. Another one could be, perhaps I want to explore career change, or perhaps I want to get out of my day-to-day a bit. So I might think strong versus weak ties, or close versus distant ties. And so that might be a number. How many curious career conversations am I having every month with someone I've not met before? So I would be really specific. I think the more specific you can be, the better. So for me, that's much more useful than how many career conversations am I having, because that would be less helpful in terms of what I would be trying to achieve. So, or you could just say number of new people that I've met, sort of outside of the day-to-day. And then maybe as a team, if we are thinking, one of the things that we want to develop, and we were talking about this at an event yesterday, is our learning quotient. And one of the contributors to learning quotient is learning sort of fast from things that go wrong. So not really failing fast, because that always feels a bit cliche, but it's more sort of being comfortable doing things for the first time, trying things out, knowing some of those things won't work, knowing we will make mistakes. So at the moment as a team, we have, and we've talked about this before, we have mistake moments. So we actually get data. So we could be like, well, as a team, how many mistake moments have we shared in the last 3 months? Okay, and then what have we, most importantly, to Steve's point around action, what have we done differently as a result? What actions are we going to take? If we're not sharing those mistake moments, okay, well, we're sort of limiting our learning. Maybe we need to do something slightly different. Maybe there's a new way that we kind of want to experiment with that. If our sort of uber purpose is to increase our learning quotient. More to come on learning quotient, because it's something we're spending a bit of time on. So I think that would be helpful. Capturing mistake moments, we share them on Teams with everybody in our company. Teams channel, you just go into everyone and just say mistake moment, share what it is, share what you learnt. And yeah, but we're a small company with high levels of trust, which we know because we've got data on that. So wouldn't necessarily work for everyone. Just do your own mistake moments if you feel like you couldn't necessarily kind of share that with everybody else. So that's the provocation, or the prompt that I will leave you with today, is what do you want to develop in? And then how are you going to get the data to support that development, to help you to get more insights and to turn those insights into action? I'd love to do more on this. I think this could be really interesting. And if anybody thinks that idea of a squiggly scorecard, maybe something to review once a month, could be helpful, just always email us, sarah@amazingif.com or helen@amazingif.com. And I will be saving the chat so that we can start thinking about our skills sprint for later this year. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope that's been useful. Love spending time with you on this very sunny Thursday morning. Have a good Easter. If people are having a break over Easter, enjoy the chocolate, which I absolutely will. We've got no PodPlus for the next 2 weeks because Helen and I are on holiday and in different places and spaces. So we'll back with you post the chocolate break, as I like to think of it. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.